Hello, everyone. How do we sound? How do we sound?
Sounding good.
Hopefully, everyone
Hello.
is doing all right. Ender's back. I
Hi.
just saw your back for a minute.
I had to unplug some stuff. It was crazy timing. It was bad timing.
Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of Starjump Station. I know we've been talking about it for quite a while, but we've been wanting to put something together that was kind of interesting. And, we've got a lot of projects sort of in the hopper, and we were kind of adjusting priority of certain projects, but we always wanted to do something that was a discussion show where we could talk about the latest Star Citizen topics or just topics that interested us or go over things that are kind of percolating. So finally got it together. We did was it a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we did our kind of SitCon soft launch recap episode. But this is the first proper Starjump Station episode, so we're glad to be here. Obviously, I'm Grim. With me is Ender and Starlette. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How you doing?
So, Starlette, what you been up to this past week? Anything exciting?
I've been away from Star Citizen, working on Hangar Link.
Hangar Link, yeah.
We'll bring us to show there shortly.
Yes.
And apart from that, it's just been relaxing after CitizenCon still.
Yeah.
Winding down still. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later.
We'll have an update on Hangar Link here in just a minute. And then Ender, last but certainly not least, what has your week been like? What have you been up to?
Tons and tons of work, and just wanting to get back to Star Citizen and kind of enjoy the community.
Yeah. Well, first, before we get too deep into things, big shout out to His Divine Shadow and Reese for the gifted subs. Thank you so much, you two. Really appreciate our community. Might have Starlette cutting in and out a little bit, but we will get her camera locked in here shortly. It may be overheating. She may be, in fact, too hot for her own camera. That is known to happen. So we have a lot to cover tonight, so we're just going to kind of jump right in. We got a few topics we will talk about, and then we will go into our main topic, which, as you know, is fleet gameplay. And obviously, a lot of that will be speculative in nature, but we had some things we want to go over in regards to that. So let's just jump right in. I think the first thing we wanted to talk about was Hangar Link. We have a little bit of an update on that. So Starlette, feel free to take it away on what you've been doing with Hangar.link this past week, and I can play the video here when you're ready.
Sure. So we've been working on a project called Hangar Link, which is a web tool to help you manage your pledges, your ships, your hangar, your CCUs, your paints. You can load all your hangar data into it and sort of filter and search and get a really nice, concise, single-page view of your hangar, which, if anyone's got quite a large hangar on the RSI site, you'll know with 10 pledges per page, it's slightly painful. Yeah, as your hangar gets larger, especially now that we're all buying more CCUs, not standalone ships, which are sort of lots and lots of very small purchases, it just gets out of control really quickly.
Yeah.
So anyway, go over to Hangar Link, have a look. It's coming along really nicely. It has lots of nice features to look at your hangar and to manage your hangar. What we're going to show you today is just a little sneak peek at the CCU calculator part of the hangar. So
we got that up now.
Yep, take it away. It's just going to show you loading data into Hangar Link from a file, and then we're going to go over to the CCU page. We're going to enter in the ship we want to CCU from and the ship we want to CCU to. So an Avenger Stalker and a Polaris. And what it's going to do is it's going to work out, based on what's in your hangar, it's going to calculate every possible combination of CCU chains that has savings and present you with them. Once you're here and it's done its processing, you can then work through all of the paths that it found and plot your way forward through a CCU chain, and you can see how much discount or savings is ahead of you. You can see how much savings has been created through this chain, and you can sort of go back and forward and figure out how you want to create your chain.
It's a really
so this is
tactile
like,
experience. I love how, like, interactive it is.
there'll be another version which will be less interactive, where you'll set, these are the ships I have, these are the ships I want, please work out the best possible combinations of CCUs to make all that happen in the most efficient way. There'll be that automatic version, but this version is very much a tactile way to understand how your CCU chains are coming together and what options you have, and get a feel for the CCU chain as it's created, not just be overwhelmed with a whole bunch of information points on screen all at once.
And as we go into IAE, this stuff becomes obviously incredibly important because people find ways not only to save money but just to get the most efficient path towards a ship they want. Obviously, for those of you that have heard this before, there's kind of a good path and a bad path to go with these ships sometimes. So, and with prices on ships fluctuating, as we've seen in the past, a lot of times those ships are going, well, I guess they always go up in price. I don't know if CIG ever decreases the price, but that becomes increasingly important.
Well, to be fair, I mean, and for those of you who don't know about CCU chains, I think we'll do a video on them at some stage in the near future. But you can buy sort of little jumps between ships that have a disproportionately large discount, or you can have a small jump between two ships that happens to increase in price due to CIG raising prices. You join all these together, and you can get some phenomenal discounts. And it's not about backing the project less, but it's more about you can get more for your money in terms of what's in your hangar.
Yeah, absolutely. His Divine Shadow, thank you so much for the gifted subs. Quinn also subscribed at tier 1. Thank you so much. Salute everyone. Yeah, really cool. I mean, I think this is going to be, I know for myself, I'm going to use it. So is this going to be something, Starlette, that is active for IAE? I know you've been kind of testing it. Okay, cool.
I'll roll this version out this week, so you can have a look at it, and awesome. We'll just keep pushing in features there all the way through to IAE.
Cool. And another quick update. I know I still get DMs and stuff asking if the Fleet Picks thing is still a thing. Is it still in production? Very much so. Me and Starlette were just talking this week about a way maybe to launch the Fleet Picks thing in sort of a half-finished state so people could at least start playing with it. So what it very likely will be was that there will be a lot of the beauty ships in, fully textured and everything, and then maybe some ships are not. They're just their hollow model untextured look as a placeholder until those get finished by myself. There's some ships too I'm waiting for the newest models on. For example, the Banu Merchantman, we know it just went through a redesign. I'm hoping to get something either modeled myself or a hollow model from CIG at some point to just plug that in. So definitely still in production. We're working really hard on it. I would say every week I get through about 5 ships a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the complexity of that ship. And, again, working with people like VMXEO, who has done an absolute, metric ton of work for me to get those models in my hand so that we can plug them into this Fleet Picks thing and make a really cool tool that works, that is fully integrated into Hangar Link. And I know Starlette's got a lot of cool ideas for how those Fleet Picks can also be used in other areas of Hangar Link and what we can do with that. So yeah, anything else we want to talk about with this, Starlette, before we move on?
No, apart from the fact that if you haven't looked at it for a while, it's had lots of changes recently. Yep. As Shadow just said, it exports to the Fleetview 42 Fleet Picks now, so it helps to get your data into the right format already. So it's kind of useful today.
Yeah. And real quick note, everyone, I saw some of the people in chat say that they wish they could see it because they're driving or whatever. Just a reminder that as soon as we get done with this stream, I'll be pulling this this stream down, and it will be uploaded to the YouTube channels for people to catch up on later. That's how we'll do every Starjump Station. Again, our goal, Starjump Station, is to do a new episode every single Friday night. So we'll be here next week with a new episode, new topic. So
Can I
yeah,
just say before we go that the link to it's just hanger.link, HANGAR .link, HTTPS. So just surf there in your browser and you'll find it and has some simple instructions to get started with the connectivity.
And big shout out to Lundfasi, the creator of Starship 42, someone that I have been in, pretty semi-regular conversation back and forth with, and he's just been very supportive of what we're doing, and I have been very supportive of some of the updates he's trying to make to Starship 42. I'm a big fan of that website as well. And I know he's doing some pretty cool stuff with the Endeavor. We're going to be doing some really cool stuff with the Endeavor as an example. And there was even a cool bit of camaraderie between me and him where we were talking about maybe sharing some assets and stuff. So again, one goes to show you once again that the Star Citizen community is really cool. So
and I could say the same thing about CCU game. There's a Chrome extension there for has a similar purpose in helping you with your Hanger data. It's really neat as well. So check that out too.
Yeah. Cool. So let's move on to the next thing. Next thing we're just going to do real quick. One thing I wanted to cover is everyone's been talking about the 400i, and I agree it's a really interesting ship. But one thing I haven't seen too much discussion about was the 400i commercial. I wanted to play that real quick and just get Ender and Starlette's opinions on the commercial. So we won't spend too much time on it. Just wanted to give CIG a little props for busting out yet another amazing ship commercial that makes it hard to not spend money on this game. So we'll go ahead and play that now.
Through unforgiving lands, across the impossible
Reclaimer
expanse,
in the background.
A mirage calls, a distant oasis. We chase what most consider myth. Pursue an obsession. That's what pushes us to greatness. The oasis. It's real.
So cool.
Still trying to win one.
The 400i by Origin Jump.
I couldn't believe how ugly it was when I first saw it, and now I quite like it. It's crazy.
So there it is, the new Origin 400i commercial. Again, this is the commercial I wished. His Divine Shadow, thanks for gifting another tier 1 sub. Oh my goodness, going crazy tonight. But this is the commercial I wish the Carrick would have got. The Carrick's commercial, you only saw the Carrick for about 3 seconds at the end, it felt like.
Yeah.
But I thought this was an amazing spot CIG did. It really showed off the ship in a variety of environments, which I think these commercials should do. Obviously, these things are designed to make you spend money. That's what a commercial is. But what I really loved is that they showed off things we know are kind of being worked on. So I love that there was a lot more of this like cloud tech in it and stuff like that. I just thought it was really cool. Ender, what was your thoughts on it?
It felt like a BMW commercial.
Yeah.
Or a Mercedes commercial where you're seeing it go through all of these terrains and everything, but
and the beauty shots of it and in the showroom,
shiny and beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm with Starlette. I hated the look of this at the beginning, but the more I see it, the more I enjoy it.
Yeah.
This has, if I compare this to the 600i advert, this one definitely has better imagery.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the pace of the 600i advert. I like the tempo of how it progressed.
Is that
I
the
really
one
enjoyed that
where
one.
it starts off where it's almost like carving something?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah. That's a
yes.
really nice one. I've
Classical
watched
music
every
and
commercial.
yeah, same, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
I thought they did something really interesting with the website for the 400i as well. Any of you that are familiar with like when Apple does a website for or a sitelet for like a new iPhone or a tablet or something, when you're scrolling through with your mouse, the product will sometimes do an exploded view, and if you reverse scroll, it will recombine, and it's all dictated by how you move through it with your mouse. They did that for the 400i website. It wasn't as successful, I think, as they were hoping it to be, but I could tell where they were pulling that reference from. They wanted to feel the 400i to sort of feel like this high end Apple product, or high end thing. You know what I mean? So I thought that them doing the website like that, they were trying to connect with how a lot of those high end product websites are. It was a little weird though; it didn't totally work very smoothly, but I get what they were trying to do, and I thought it was really cool. Um, Cool. Yeah. So
And
that's it. We just wanted to go over it really quick. I had it, when they released the 400i and it was the talk of the town and stuff. I didn't even realize it was a 400i commercial. I don't think I actually watched it because when they showed it at the ship talk for CitizenCon, that was the one moment. Of course, I stepped away, so I had totally missed it. So I wanted to show it. Those of you that know that with the Starjump cinematics, obviously the Star Citizen commercials are a big influence on the cinematics, and one of the reasons I do those along with CIG concept art. But yeah, just thought it was really cool, really well done. I don't like every single commercial they do, but I thought this one was incredibly well done.
yeah,
Cool. All right, so moving on, we were going to talk real quick about the Anvil Liberator Q&A, which did drop. I thought it was one of the more interesting Q&As that actually, asked some good questions and got some interesting answers, including some answers that affected other ships. So one thing I went ahead and put together was I put together a little bit of a Liberator loop to play while we kind of go over this Q&A, and the loop at least shows off a few different ways that the Liberator could be configured with different ships. Because as I was playing around with it in the fleet view or in 3D, it was kind of interesting to get a feel for how big the ship actually is. Because it's kind of almost hard. From pictures, it looks small, but we'll go ahead and play that now, and we'll talk about this Q&A. And Starlette and Ender, feel free to interject at any point. One of the things that was asked was, will the Liberator have any refuel, repair, rearm capability? This was a big topic of discussion because there was one half of people that said it wouldn't do that. It would start impeding on the Kraken. And there was others that said, well, if it doesn't do that, then it's kind of a worthless ship. You might as well just, have your M2 or something. And they did come back. They did say the Liberator will support basic levels of refueling, repairing, and rearming. That will be done manually by players, though, so not by any sort of automated systems. And it will be using supplies stored in the cargo bay. Now, this is the
I
same
thought
way. Go ahead, Charlotte.
I read that as being by hand, like with hand repair tools or hand refueling tools, however that will work. Am I wrong there?
That's the way I was understanding it. So I was thinking
yeah.
like repair with like the multi-tool repair,
Yep.
like that
Right.
sort of
Yes.
thing.
Refuel. You're actually going to have to go to the cargo, grab the fuel, bring it
Yeah.
up,
Right.
pump it somehow.
Right.
That's kind of
Which,
how I'm reading it as well.
yeah, I think you're both right. I don't even know how manual refueling works. I don't know if I've ever seen them talk about that. I'm sure they have at some point, but regardless, um, the fact that it can do limited, I think, gives it some more flexibility. But again, wake up call to everyone. It follows the same rules as the Kraken in that you're pulling those supplies from the cargo grid. They're not stored in a separate fuel canister or anything like that. They come from the cargo grid. Same thing with the Kraken, which has full repair, rearm, refuel capabilities, but it still comes from the Kraken's 3900 SCU of cargo hold. The issue with the Liberator is it only has 400 SCU or somewhere around that of cargo. So those refuel, repair, supplies are going to be limited. So The next thing I thought was pretty interesting was that they asked, are the ships on the deck shielded by the Liberator's size 3 shields with the new SDF shield tech? I originally thought no. I thought the SDF shields would bubble around the cockpit and sort of wrap it or wrap around the hull of the ship, but outside ships on the deck would not be protected, again, from the original Kraken description. They came back and said, not explicitly protected, however, the shield projects multiple meters above the ship's hull. I wish we knew how many meters, but I guess it's probably different per ship. So most ships would likely be partially covered, but not entirely covered. Same applies to the Kraken and any other ships where vehicles are stored on the exterior. I thought this was really, really cool because that means on a ship like the Kraken, that has a huge hull cross section and a huge capital class shield, I imagine its SDF shield is going to be multiple meters around the ship. So if you had arrows parked on the deck of the Kraken, or even like Hornets or ships of that size, they could be completely covered by the shield tech.
Yep, which is great.
And that to me is kind of a big deal, to be totally honest with you. If you have a bunch of, let's take a small ship or ships that sit really low, like the Buccaneer, Arrow, etc. If you have those on the deck and they're protected by the SDF shields, that does make a difference. You know what I mean?
You got to see that on the 890's nose on the hangar.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Is that already how it works, Starlette? So the SDF shields protect a ship on the nose of the 890? Do you know?
I don't actually know. Does anyone know in chat? I don't know.
That'd be an interesting
check it out.
test.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious, because they say multiple meters, but meters are kind of big. I mean, you know, some ships don't have a tall meterage, so I'd love to know more about that. I mean, again, it's probably different per ship, but yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. Let's see here. Again, I won't go through every single question. I thought those two were pretty interesting. They did ask if that front garage door ramp, if it can be driven up, because I was thinking that you could. They said that you could, but you probably shouldn't because you'll damage it and then you can't open it. I thought that was interesting. So one of the reasons when I did this little demo thing here, I didn't put any ground vehicles up top because, again, you try to drive a Nova or Ballista up there, you could damage your ship. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Gets damaged though, you can still use the rear door, right? So
that's true. There is a rear ramp door.
A lot of people do that anyway.
Yeah. And because this isn't like an actual, you know, LCAC landing craft, you know, where the front ramp lets down onto the beach and the back is sticking out in the water. This, you could easily depart both sides of it and be totally fine. I was looking for any other
points that I like was about the M2. I felt so sorry for the M2. They should have renamed this to why not to buy an M2 Q&A.
Yeah, so
it will have armor and it will be quite beefy. And the poor M2 has got less and less advantage. Maybe it has some aerodynamic advantage. Maybe and it's got a few guns pointing down, but beyond that, it seems like this. If you have a limited number of ships, this seems to be more practical, I think.
Yeah, and they and by the way, everyone in chat, the demo you're seeing playing there, everything is to scale. By the way, just everything's to scale. So yeah, they do ask what is the primary usage difference between this and the M2, and the answer was the big differentiator is the M2 is not designed specifically to carry spaceships, let alone multiple spaceships, which is the Liberator's key role. So again, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. If you haven't read the Q&A, I do encourage you to go read it. I thought it was a really good Q&A. Sometimes the Q&As on ships kind of irk me because people will ask the same questions we get on every single Q&A, and CIG has answered it 50 million times now. I was glad to see not one question of can you make the turrets controlled by a computer blade, for example. CIG's answered this 50 million times at this point that yes, you can if you have the appropriate computer space on board the ship. So I was glad to see that all the questions here I thought were really tailored to what people have been asking. Another thing I will point out that they said is someone asked, is the Liberator a capital ship as it is categorized in the ship matrix, or is this incorrect? Their answer was the Liberator has no capital components. While this is not the sole requirement of a capital ship, size and role also play a part. The Liberator being listed as capital is an error on the matrix, and it should be listed as large. That made sense to me. They'll think the Liberator is 119 meters. The Carrack is 123, I think. So, and the Carrack's a large ship, so that made sense. This is not a capital ship. So yeah,
Just baffles me how they just can't keep a simple few data points accurate.
between those two different. Yeah, no, it's kind of funny.
They must be doing it on purpose. I don't know.
What this leads me to say though is that there's still hope, Starlette, for your Anvil capital ship carrier.
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah. And I got to thinking about that, and I knew you were disappointed in the Liberator's non-capital presence. So I came up with a new turn, a new variant on the Liberator. I call it the Super Liberator. I'm unveiling it for the first time here just for you, Starlette. I'll go ahead and hit that now. So the current Liberator is a 119 meter long ship, can carry a nice variety of vehicles. What if we took that 119 ship, stretched it out nice and big, and then turned it into the Super Liberator at 240 meters, double the amount of decks, threw on some Valkyrie components because, hey, it just looks cool. And then quickly you can see as the arrows start piling in here, you've got one crazy carrier. I think I was able to fit 16 arrows. It's 6.
That's super cool.
It's 6.
I like the extra engines on the side too.
Yes, yeah. So that, my friends, is the Super Liberator. Hopefully coming out soon from Anvil. I wish that was the case. I measured this out. I went ahead and built it out because I like the idea of the carriers having the open deck space on top. Again, that's why I got the Kraken. So I think there's something for the Liberators from a structural hull standpoint. I just wish it was like beefed up into this sort of format where you could really hold, or even made even a little wider where you can hold more variety of ships. But anyways, that's for you, Starlette, the Super Liberator. I'll make sure I email someone at CIG to get that in production immediately.
Awesome.
Riddick says my wallet is ready.
Yeah, so the Super Liberator will only be $1,800.
And it has repair facilities. And
has repair facilities, has everything you need. And I think I'm with this measured out here. I think it was only, it was 240 or 245 meters long, so it was slightly longer than an Idris. That felt more, and honestly, when you stretch it out and turn it into a much bigger capital version, it kind of works, honestly. I mean, you would need to make some design changes. I was just sort of kit bashing, but I was like, you know what? This actually doesn't look too bad of a ship. Had they have sold this, I would have been looking at what I could possibly melt because I could see it being really useful. So, but there we go, everyone. The Super Liberator. Hope you all enjoyed that.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so I need to turn off the open. Give everyone a bit of the open. Show open again. So we are going to go into our main topic now, which is fleet gameplay. Obviously, it's a pretty, it's a little bit of a vague topic in terms of it can go, into a lot of different places. And I'm sure people have a lot of different ideas on what fleet gameplay is. But one reason I wanted to talk about it is I thought it touched on a lot of things. It touches on a lot of systems being put into the game now, such as inventory. For example, how do you share inventory amongst many people in your fleet? Medical, and then things that were talked about CitizenCon, like server meshing and stuff. I know, Starlette, you had a lot of concerns over super large fleet gameplay with the sharding kind of talk that was going on, and we'll kind of get into all that. But what I thought would be kind of interesting first would be to get a sense from each and every one of us, because we all may have different opinions on what this is, but what our definition of fleet gameplay is in Star Citizen. So, Starlette, why don't we start with you?
It's a little bit vague, isn't it? I would have thought I would relate it back to old school MMORPGs. So I would say, a group of 5 or 7 people running a number of ships would be a group, and multiple of those would be a raid or a fleet. So maybe 3 ships as a group, and maybe more than that as a fleet, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, from there it just scales up as much as you can imagine, and as much as they'll support in the future.
Yeah. Ender, what about you? What's your thoughts on the definition of fleet gameplay and Star Citizen?
I actually pretty heavily agree with Starlette there. You got a group with 2 or 3 ships, and a raid or a fleet with 5, 6, 7 ships, and you can pretty much do what you want with that, with whatever CIG limits us to.
Yeah.
That's 50 ships at one time or whatever, 50 people. We don't know, but
Yeah.
hopefully it'll be some exciting stuff in the future from them.
Yeah. For me, I think I definitely agree with both of your points on sort of the definition for me. I would say that with the depth that CIG goes on all their systems, whether it's medical or inventory, or how detailed ships are, for example, for me, fleet gameplay in Star Citizen, specifically Star Citizen, means kind of means a lot of things coming together, from and specifically a lot of subsystems that CIG is trying to use to differentiate their game from many others out in the market. So like true multi-crew gameplay, ships with ships that have the ability to work together. So, a ship that does scanning, a ship that does pure combat, a ship that does logistics and stuff like that. It's all those little things coming together to form this thing that I would call fleet gameplay, which is essentially, much like you said, Starlet, it's a raid. It's a type of raid where everyone has sort of unique niche roles that come together to create this one bigger thing, where this one bigger thing may not operate so good if it loses some of those smaller components, right? Sort of like if you were doing a raid in WoW or something and you lost your healers, then your raid is not going to be very successful. If you lost your tanks, you're not going to be very successful. I look at it as a fleet gameplay is very much that sort of idea. You can't use your medical support people in the fleet because you're
Yep.
going to be in trouble. You can't lose your repair capabilities in the fleet. It doesn't matter what type of fleet you are, whether you're combat oriented or, maybe commercial cargo hauling, you're still going to have those other components flying along with you. And then, as you said, Starlet, there's a scale to that. I think it can be as low as 3 ships. I think 2 ships, to me, in my mind, is more like, kind of a wingman sort of situation. But once you get to 3 ships and up, you start kind of looking at it as a fleet sort of deal. And as the fleet gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then the fleet probably starts getting subdivided into squadrons and things like that. So yeah, so that's my kind of definition of fleet gameplay. I think there's probably 2 different ways to look at fleet gameplay. There's like the near term and the long term. The near term would be things that are either in game now or coming out soon, and then the long term would be stuff that is probably still far in the future, that we can consider. But in the near term, I mean, the number one thing I think that's going to kind of shake things up is going to be medical. The whole death of a spaceman, medical gameplay, which we know is coming on in 315. So now, if you have, let's take a scenario. Let's say it's Ender and Bingo are going out to do HVTs or whatever. Now you almost want to consider, maybe if there's if another friend who has a medical ship, maybe standing by for medical, or staying off station from the actual battle to play that medical role. So I think that could start to play a little bit of a hand in what we might consider the very beginnings of fleet gameplay. Ender, what's your thoughts on that?
No, I think that the medical stuff is primary, and I think it's great to see them finally putting stuff like that in. I think the next is going to be the personal repair and all that. But for now, having that and having the ability to kind of stay off station to help will be key. Right now, you have to have your medical person with you because they have the medical gun, they have the drugs and all of that. But in the future, being able to be off station and act almost as an ambulance is going to be real fun for me.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that that's a little further away than I would like it to be. But having it start now with Death of a Spaceman, or not Death of a Spaceman, but the current medical system and the current death system and respawn system, it's a good sign of what's to come for sure.
Or even like, even if it's not like medical, imagine if you're going out and doing, combat missions in your fighter, and there's a high risk that you're going to get destroyed and your ship then turns into a box or whatever floating around and all your stuff is lootable. You start to think too, like, do I need to have a friend who's really not interested in combat, just kind of hanging back to go and retrieve those things if I do get damaged, to loot it so it's not lost? While those are really just us reacting to systems coming online, in effect, it starts forcing a style of fleet, small, very small and level fleet gameplay. Starlette, how do you see like a lot of these things coming into play in the near term, especially with like medical and combat?
Yeah, it's super interesting, isn't it? I don't really feel like I deeply understand how it's all going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, what Death of a Spaceman? What does it really mean to your game experience and your character to die too many times? I mean, what are the implications they're going to implement? And I don't think we really know that the full extent of how that is all going to play out. Even though even there's a lot of history of being told ideas about how it might work. It'll be very interesting to see how it really gets implemented. But it becomes like another group. A WoW group has to have a healer. You can't go out as a group of people without a healer. So it kind of seems sensible that you'd bring your Apollo or your citizens equipped with their healing tools and things ready to help. That makes total sense. Yeah, it all comes down to learning about how this Death of a Spaceman unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, I even look at things like if you're a miner, right, and you just like getting in your prospector, you like going out to to asteroids or maybe on the surface of the moon and doing your mining. The whole fact that we have this medical thing and Death of a Spaceman coming on board and lootable bodies now, one thing to remember about that is now people are going to be hunting other people because they know, even if you take away the whole aspect of, they're just looking for someone to loot. People, whether we like it or not, they love to be the pain in the butt in video games. They love to troll people. They love to cause people problems. I know, it sounds incredible, but people like to do that. So now you have to think about, now CIG has put in a real punishment to players that die or get incapacitated and get their ships blown up or whatever. So people are going to be hunting for people now. You know what I mean? So it's sort of, I was just talking with someone the other day in chat how we were talking about the whole OD squads or ODing people in green zones with the med gun. And part of my comment on that was like, well, I hate that it's a med gun because that almost encourages people to interact in a violent way with it, where if it was more like a medical procedure, you know what I mean, it wouldn't be that way. But when the medical system is literally put into a laser gun, of course people are going to go there with it. You know what I mean? So, I think even something like I was saying, like mining, again, if I was going to go out mining now, if I had a friend of mine who doesn't have anything going on that night and they're just like messing around in the verse, they're not in the maybe they're big into combat, but they don't really feel like doing it. I might ask them, hey, would you accompany me? You know what I mean? If protect me, or or at the very least, if something does happen to me, loot my stuff so I don't lose my,
Yep.
my gold, seat cushion that I got for, being a concierge or whatever it is. So those things will start to force our hand a little bit, I think, in terms of
Will change if once we have more of a permanent presence on servers, once server meshing is in, and once we have more than 50 people, you know, it, once an organization can have a 24/7 presence around everyone else, in the
yeah,
same shard, that will change things too, because there's tons of people who are interested in medical gameplay, tons of orgs out there that will have basically a phone number to call when you get into trouble when you need help. So
yeah,
it's going to change the dynamic there as well.
yeah. And his divine shadow brings something up. With the wipe coming, the buddy system is going to become important for at least a little bit. I totally agree, because everyone's going to be kind of starting from zero on the money thing again. I mean, we'll start with our whatever credits we get, with our package or whatever. But
5K.
what's that?
5K.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and another thing too is that they're going to have to make payouts on things appropriate. Where now, we may do a mission and we get a payout that, oh, it's a nice little bit of money for me. Now they're going to have to start really thinking about either one of two things: making the payouts on stuff lucrative enough to where you may hire help to come along with you, or make some sort of gameplay system where, if I don't know, if you, for example, well, obviously, I know they got the beacons in, so if you medically bring someone back, I think you get like 15K AUEC now. I think they raised it to 15 or 20,
Yeah.
something like that. Either way, you get a payout, but they're going to have to look for ways to incentivize some of that fleet gameplay as well. His divine shadow says 15K. They bumped it up to you, so all that's going to come into play. But then, as more of these systems come online, we're going to need more than just the one person going out with us. It'll turn into 3 and then 4, and then, oh, we need this and then we need that. And then before you know it, you've got a small fleet operating. And
Yeah, that's not on Star Citizen Live
yeah,
with um, uh, safety in numbers is
safety
what
in
Dan
numbers. Yeah.
mentioned.
Well, think
So
about
that's the
this.
game.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you're saying. Think about this. We've heard a lot about the whole scanning gameplay coming online at some point. They even showed us examples of how you'll be able to mask your own signature in the shadow of a larger ship or whatever. There's going to be, I bet there's going to be this whole like little mini game people play with that scanning thing where, and again, it's all matters of scale. So let's say your org has 2 massive hull E's that are fully laden with cargo, and they're going to be heading from Stanton to Pyro, some dangerous route, whatever it is. It's not going to be just you fly along with your Apollo and just keep track. I mean, you're going to need medical flying with them. You're going to need a crucible flying or some sort of repair scenario there. You're going to need, obviously, combat ships to help protect that holy fleet. You're then going to need you need to think about things like, well, we need to be able to scan around us and get a big picture of who's in our, who's in our piece of real estate here. So, oh, we need our Polaris out there now with its capital class radar. So again, you start to see how the pieces fall into place. But at the very small level, even now, we're sort of starting to see the need for those other ships. One
Totally
of the
agree.
yeah,
Just you're absolutely right. But one curious thing about the Hull E and the Hull D is that they do have capital radar. It's the weirdest thing.
do they? I didn't know
So
they had capital
yeah,
radar.
yeah. But apart from that, you're absolutely right. You definitely need to take a lot of support ships, and a Polaris would be an excellent choice, probably,
Yeah,
given its
and I
speed.
I originally thought of that stuff as profit based, you know what I mean? When I was thinking of the Holly and like hauling some big load, I said, oh, well, of course you're going to bring all that stuff along because you don't want to lose the, 90 million AUC you're going to make profit or whatever it is. But now, and I've only really started thinking about this with Death of a Spaceman and the medical gameplay and a lot of this 315 stuff. I've started thinking like, actually, no, it's not just the profit. Your hand's going to be forced into taking this stuff. just because of multiple different risks involved, right? So it's not even going to be just about purely money. It's going to be about one thing. Ender, you know this very well from a lot of the role play games we've played. One of the one of the rules a lot of times on role play servers is to value your life, right? They have to enact this rule that you have to agree to, and they'll even test you on it sometimes. These role play servers.
Yep.
That you have to play the game in a way in which you value your life, right? So if someone pulls a gun on you, you would react as if you're in fear of dying. But
Yep.
here in Star Citizen, what's really interesting about this, and it's one of the things that fascinates me about the game, is the game systems being involved. We don't have to pretend; it's forcing
You
us.
need to value your life.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, one thing I wanted to ask both of you and get your opinions on, and this is along the same vein as what we've been talking about, but let's project ourselves about 4 months into the future here. 315's been out a little while. We have we've built up a little bit of money now. Our credits have risen. We've done some some gameplay now. We've built back up our credit coffers. We have inventory now that we have to consider, obviously, and the ability for our stuff to be looted so we can lose our items. And we have this whole medical system where we can go down. And when we do respawn, we're not respawn where we last landed. We're respawned at our place of residence or hospital or whatever. So here's a scenario. What is the next xenothreat test going to be like? So Ender, what do you think? I mean, we played a lot of Xenothreat this last time around. I mean, we died. I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I died more than you, I'm
Yep.
sure, but we die a lot.
A lot.
So what do you think the next Xenothreat's going to be like?
Honestly, I think it's a lot more people working together, a lot more of that starting fleet gameplay where people are making a plan and they're going, all right, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. And they're moving to it. And it's not just everybody waiting around for the next battle. You've got people who are specifically ready for a fight. And you've got people who are specifically ready to go in and start getting supplies. People who are specifically there to defend those people with close combat. And then once that's all done and a javelin appears at the station, everybody's ready to go back and move together. You got people who are going to be specifically staying out of fights because their entire role there is going to be grabbing supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not going to be able to get into that fight with the javelin.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a lot slower, but you're going to see a lot more of people having to work together and communicate and really start building parties and start going in with large groups, or people just being okay with pulling in random people and going, hey, you're in our Discord now. You're going to need to be on this. We need this. We need this. Who's doing what?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be real fun to see, because it's going to be nice to see people not just running in there and ready to blow up their ship. I run out of bombs. I'm probably going to blow my ship up over.
I think I even
going back and
deliberately flew.
resupplying.
Yeah, I think I even deliberately flew my ship into the Idris when I was like, oh, I'm out of ammo. Let me park this
We're
thing.
We're not going to be able to do that now. Or you're just going to wear crap armor until you're out of that armor, and all you've got is your good stuff that you want to keep.
Yeah.
So it's going to force people to really think about what they're doing and what side of the wall they're going to want to be on. It's going to be nice to see that because people will have to choose that.
I have a feeling we're going to start seeing a lot more Carracks and 890 jumps and stuff sitting slightly off station in those battles. But Starlette, what do you think? The next Xenothreat. I mean, it's obviously going to have to be played quite differently.
I mean, I've got a nice bright pink set of armor all picked out that you can buy from Paula so that no one will want to steal. That's my plan.
That's a good point.
Are you sure?
So I think everything you guys said is pretty spot on for the direction the game is going. But I don't think in 4 months that we're really going to have Death of a Spaceman. We won't have physicalized armor. The ships will still explode. with a bang. They won't just turn into a Hulk that you can run to the escape pods or that you can get out of without dying. You know, we're still going to explode, and consequences for exploding might not quite be there. But absolutely, that's the direction the game's going in. And I think, you know, by 4 months, I think we would have become more accustomed to working in pairs or working in small groups, just because of all the other players around and not wanting to be vulnerable out there.
Yeah, and I see every time a new system does come online, we are going to see a shift in how people play the game. And I know some people were asking, and I was one of these people. I was asking, why are they implementing this whole medical system now? It feels early. There's other systems I think we need to come online first before this medical. But then watching Richard Trier, I always say his last name wrong. I think it's Trier or Tyre, talking today, about the medical system and stuff. And they did ask that question, and he said that we need to get these systems in the game so we can see how they play out, because there's going to be a lot of iteration on them and stuff going forward. And I think, yeah, exactly. Richard Pryor, he was great, really funny, really funny on the CIG videos. I mean, he really brings it to life. I was watching a documentary on Richard Pryor today, so it's really weird. But think of things like, one of the things I'm probably most excited about in Star Citizen, like probably one of the number one things, is when like ship armor and not like ships go boom immediately, but with like ship armor and all that and incapacitating ships. When that stuff comes online, imagine you're in Xenothreat and you're engaging Xenothreat, baddies. Your ship gets disabled. Well, now you and maybe the two other people in the ship, you're back in the back patching things up, doing the Sea of Thieves gameplay loop, and you're a sitting duck. So then again, you go back to, okay, well, you need a wingman. You need someone who's there to protect you while you're getting things back into place on your ship, or rerouting power, or restarting systems and stuff. So that'll cause people to play differently, because you're not going to have ships going boom every 5 minutes in a Xenothreat event. You're going to have a bunch of ships sitting around incapacitated where they're trying to restart engines or rerouting power or what have you. So again, each time one of those systems comes online, it's going to bring a new approach that people are going to have to get used to. You know what I mean?
There's a really cool item in the roadmap that's very opaquely worded, which Jake pointed out.
I think I know what you're going to talk about.
Time distance fields and chopping up the internals of your ship. So you imagine you're flying half a Carrack and it's still kind of working because you've got the half that has the components that you need to make it kind of work, and trying to keep things held together enough to survive. It's going to be quite fun.
And on the progress tracker, I forget the exact terminology, and I don't want to get it wrong, but I know one of the words that's actually in the descriptor, and I encourage people, if you haven't went and looked at this deliverable, you should, because it's really interesting. They have talked a little bit about it before, and they have talked about how important it's going to be, but it's something regarding breakability on ships, and it's essentially the system that will allow ships to not go boom, right? Instantly go boom. That's from the description, the little paragraph description when you click on it. And maybe someone in chat can tell me the exact name of it. I know breakability is in the title of that deliverable, though, on the progress tracker. But that's a big one, and I think it's slated to either be worked on like right now, or was just worked on. It's like we're like in the zone of it being worked on, which is pretty exciting, because I see the game. I personally can't wait for that to come on board, because I know like myself and Ender, we've played Sea of Thieves at times, and Sea of Thieves is one of those games where like I can get bored pretty quick in that game, where I'm just like, okay, and here's the waves and we're going to point A to point B. But there's also those moments where you're fighting another ship, but you're also filling up with water, and somebody's driving the ship, someone's shooting cannons, the other one's like bailing water, and it gets really intense for 5 minutes, and I would love for that to come on board in Star Citizen. So
fire for sure at first.
Yeah,
And
fire. We know
hopefully then
fire.
it will
Yeah.
come in with the relays and the
Yep.
bypassing broken power conduits and things,
Yep.
and maybe oxygen tanks and
Yeah. I'm
things
hoping,
like
for
that.
example, with that fire system, it's a nice back scratcher there, Ender.
Thank you.
I'm hoping with the fire system, for example, and we just saw recently with the 400i how the component room is actually a little cooler than the rest of the ship because it's being cooled. So it's kind of dealing with those room temperatures, room pressurizations, and all that.
Yeah.
The room system, I guess they call it. But it would be really cool, like with the fire system, if it's a part of the ship that there's no one in, just being able to vent the room to put the
That would
fire
be
out.
great.
You know what I mean?
That would
Shut the
be
oxygen down to
amazing.
that section. I really hope at some point soon we start to see what the UI for that kind of stuff will look like. I know, especially on take a ship like the Cuddy Black or something. I don't think is big enough for this, but let's take a ship like the Carrack. I hope that's what like some of the on the upper bridge of the Carrack, right behind the pilot station, there's that
Yeah.
globe hologram. I'm
Yeah.
hoping from those type of stations or the engineer stations, you can pull up some sort of UI that allows you to control those power relays, the room system, all that stuff. So I'm really kind of interested to see, um, you know, what that turns out to be. But I know we're kind of diverging a little bit. But again, um,
I'm wondering if the relays themselves are physicalized, so you have to run around the ship to get to them.
well, if I'm trying to remember back to that video, and I've labeled this video my favorite Star Citizen developer video, but it's the one where they show the power relay system.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't remember if he said you have to go around the ship. I want to say that there was some gameplay involved where you had to go to the power
Yeah.
relays. Um,
And
yeah,
that
that'd
would
be interesting.
make sense. This is the discussion that you and I, Grim, had uh, when they first started discussing engineering.
Mhm.
And it was, they have these engineering stations and they have multiple other stations in, say, a Kraken. It would be interesting if you have a main engineer and then you have your mechanic or whatever,
Yeah,
who your engineer's job is to go, okay, I've got fire here, I've got a power here, power issues here. This room is venting for some reason, and then they're sending their team out and they're basically directing them. All right, so it looks like the relay in this area is out. Can you reroute the power using whatever?
yeah.
And so it would be interesting to see where you've got one person whose job is to go around the ship and actually physically be there, moving parts and moving those power junctions or putting the fire out, and then another person whose job is to, like, okay, we can't get to this room, I need to vent the air out of this room, and they're able to control some stuff but have to have somebody physically there to actually do the rest of the job.
Yeah, I mean, on the Kraken
VMXCO, who's in chat now?
cool. On the Kraken specifically, I know the batteries and maybe the shield generators are all the way at the front of the ship. As a matter of fact, they're really close, according to the blockout of the ship. Obviously, this could change. But currently in the blockout, I think the shield generator and the batteries are all the way in the front of the ship, close to the elevator that takes you up to the nose turret. Like they're a good, I mean,
Yeah,
well, they're about
yeah, they're
240
right.
meters away. The ship's 270 meters long. It's about 240 to those components. That's a hell of a run.
Yep.
So yeah, that kind of would be interesting. So,
Well,
um,
it'll make it interesting for. So the biggest fear I have for large fleet gameplay is that particular roles are quite boring. Like, turret gunners are a great example. Like, why you're actually firing at something, that's great
yeah,
fun for people who enjoy that. But for the rest of the time, you're going to be sitting there on a turret doing absolutely nothing, and it's going to be boring
Exactly.
as hell. So
yeah,
hopefully they'll add these other bits and pieces. Like, so after the battle, there's fires going on, there's things that need repair, and the turret gunners can pop out of their seats and go and help and
well,
get the ship back in
that
order.
and what I hope happens, and I understand there's a lot of people that don't want this type of gameplay. But again, Richard on the Star Citizen video today talked about this. He brought this up again because it's Chris Roberts' vision. also things like hygiene and stuff will play a role, hopefully. So like if you're a turret gunner, let's say on an Idris, let's say you're flying from A to B, maybe you're going from Stanton to Pyro to Nix or whatever, you're traveling a distance, it might be good for you. Might have to get up and go take a leak in the Idris bathroom, which may be on the other side of the ship. And if the ship comes up attack, you got to run back to the turret, or you may have to go to the kitchen because again, you can't sit in the turret in your big bulky armor and backpack. We know that's going to be
Exactly.
a thing. So you're going to be sitting there in your normal undersuit or something like that. You don't have tons of food on you. Your character's getting hungry. Now you got to walk to the kitchen, grab a Snickers bar, and go potty. Sorry, I got a 6-year-old, so words like potty are commonly used in my house. And then you're running back to your nose turret. I mean, again, there could be other like fun things that come and break up that monotony of just being the turret gunner. I mean, I hope the same is the case for like whoever's piloting. Like, let's say if you have that moment where you do have like a fully loaded Idris, like let's say you put 25 people on it and let's say you are role playing it, like where you're like, okay, we're not making any ports of call here. We're going to stay on the Idris. We're traveling from here to here to here to here to here to here. Everything we have on the ship is what's going to keep us alive. There's going to be times where your pilot has to say, okay, I need, the co-pilot now to take over. I got to go use the restroom and eat something or whatever. Again, I think Richard brought up today that the survival mechanics in the game currently are pretty lenient, like you don't have to eat very often, unlike a game like Scum or something. But I could see them adjusting that and balancing that at some point to put into use those things on the ships, like our kitchens and our bathrooms and all that.
Yep.
I mean, that stuff's like, while I don't think your character is going to go full on stink mode because he hasn't showered, I think if you haven't bathed in a while, your character will probably lose some attribute points and like,
Yep.
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's aiming or this or that or whatever. It might lose a few points like any RPG. So those systems will be interesting. To kind of throw us back on topic, so we talked a lot about near term and we've delved in a little bit with the long term stuff. Let's go full into what the long term assets and prerequisites that'll ultimately be needed to support fleet gameplay, like that grand vision of what fleet gameplay could be. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. But and we may not cover every single one of them here in the show notes, but the first one for me that comes into play, and Starlette, I definitely want to hear your opinions on this, would be leadership and / org management tools and what that will look like for Star Citizen. I don't know if the developers have ever talked about that, other than that there will be some sort of maybe org overhaul. But what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on what we need for, fleet captains or admirals or whatever the terminology is going to be? What are they going to need to be able to lead, 16 ship fleet to a coordinated attack or a coordinated mission?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think they've talked about some grand ideas to give everything.
Yeah.
Like Spectrum is is supposed to be a Discord replacement. It's supposed to do absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And I don't think that will come to pass, to be honest. I think they will do progressive enhancements to the in-game functionality of the organization system. Things about reputation, things about giving access to ships and access to inventory stored in certain ships or places. Uh, permissions for various things that can be assigned to people or assigned to roles. I think all that stuff is the minimum that will be required.
Not the least of which
And
ships. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And as I'm sure as enterprising players do, we will build management and communication systems of our own on top of that are outside of the game.
Yeah. I mean, I think with those leadership and org management tools, that also starts to get into the whole, financial credit system for orgs where we can share, not only share the wealth and give different ranks of org members different stipends and stuff like that, but also maybe org members need to be taxed at every certain point or whatever. Ender, I know we've run RP guilds and stuff
Oh
and
yeah.
RPGs, and we've had to consider those systems before in terms of both allowing people to pull from the org coffers
Yep.
and take tax them. Do you have any thoughts on that and how that would factor into? Because I look at those type of systems being what incentivizes people to even be in an org or fleet or support a
Yep.
fleet. Because you have to look at like, well, why am I going to waste my night being the medical guy on an Apollo flying with this huge fleet? Why would I do that?
What's really in it for me?
Yeah.
I think it'll be important for us to be able to share ships, certain ships, with levels of people in our org, and that will allow for us to cater for those players who only have one ship package,
Yeah.
to access some bigger ships that they maybe don't have the ability to do, for earning money. You could have a guy that has the ability to run a mole in this org and earn not just themselves but also their fleet money, and they would pay back 25% of whatever they earn to the org itself, so that
Yeah.
the org can continue to run whatever large ships they have or whatever ships they're running at the time. And they're responsible during that. There's a way for us to track. It would be nice if there were a way for us to track, damages and fuel use and things
Mm,
like that, so that they can pay for that,
yeah.
and keep the upkeep on that going.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
a
it'd
good
be
point.
great.
I think they might excuse me. I think they might add some extra bonuses for player organizations. Like you get similar to the reputation system, maybe as the org gets reputation, it gets cheaper fuel, or it gets access to certain
Hmm.
ports without fees, or gets access to certain kinds of insurance without claim fees, or it gets discounts at certain shops. So I think they're
Yeah.
going to add bits and pieces like that make it more attractive to be part of an organization.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the money making industry around organizations might come from the opposite direction than just taxing every activity that happens for a particular member.
Hmm.
Yep.
Moving those Hullies, there's going to be a lot of there's going to have to be an accountant that basically organizes
Yeah.
funding this mission and divvying out the proceeds and things. So could be both directions.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, while I don't think we'll have that Eve style, economy,
Yeah.
like where people are like infiltrating orgs just to steal massive amounts of money and stuff. What I do think is that people are going to need that incentive to do certain things within a fleet where maybe they do not have a starring role. I personally do think Star Citizen is going to be unique in that people don't. I think people are going to be fine with being like the turret gunner on an Idris one night, or what have you, and playing those lesser roles. I don't necessarily agree with everyone who says that. Well, everyone's going to want to be the captain of their own ship. I don't. I personally don't think that's always going to be the case. One
No,
thing. Go ahead, Ender.
I don't see them wanting to be the captain of their own ship all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
hell, I'm
Well, especially if it's your ship that's at risk of getting damaged, you
exactly.
might want to be a crew member. One
Reese
one thing
asked a
I what did Reese ask?
sorry, Reese asked a question that I'm actually interested in getting you guys' opinion on.
Cool.
I have my own opinion on it, but uh, he brings up a good point too. Um, he said, what if the org leader makes a piss poor plan and ends up getting the ship blown up? Who pays for it then?
Well,
Um,
hopefully at that point, if you don't mind me just jumping in here, I mean, hopefully it works a lot like a guild bank or something in WoW or something would, in that there is an org coffer that, the org leaders, the council, the head of the org or whatever decides, hey, we're willing to pay such and such percentage of your ship replacement or ship repair costs, or we'll pay for all of them if your ship is involved in an org night event and your ship is lost or damaged or whatever, all repair costs will come out of the org coffers. You know what I mean? Now, if you're just off on your own doing your thing on a Wednesday night, maybe we're not paying for it. Maybe we will. It just depends on the org. But I could see there being some sort of thing where it's like, you came along for the ride. I mean, again, that's a good incentive. If you wanted people to come along for your big org night, announcing, hey, anyone that comes along, all your repair costs, your refuel costs, all that stuff's going to be covered by the org tonight.
And of course, the orgs will do their own form of farming. They'll go out there and collect lots of capital class components, for example, and keep them stored nicely at a shipyard, ready to refit ships that get blown up and reclaimed. So there'll be a lot of grunt work. It's going to be a lot of work to run orgs actually, and it's going to be a big deal. Yeah,
it's going to be great. I see it as org dues, by the way, not so much donations, which is what people are currently saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think there'd be dues because, like you're saying, Andrew, I mean, there's going to be benefits of being in an org,
100%.
and sometimes you're going to have to kind of pay dues to reap those benefits.
Yep.
By the way, VMXEO, I see you're in chat. I know you came in a little late. You may have missed the Super Liberator, but I will show that again before we chime off for the night later this evening. I think you'll like it. But going back to one idea I had regarding fleet gameplay and something I hope they implement. I don't know if this has ever been talked about. Again, maybe someone in chat knows, but when you currently, if you're playing, I'm going to keep using WoW as an example here, just because I played it for many years. I don't play it anymore. But when you did a raid or you did a dungeon, you had a party leader or a raid leader, right? And that raid leader had the ability, a few abilities that the rest didn't. The ability to, set groups and stuff like that. I hope there's some sort of system, and maybe it's limited to orgs or maybe it's limited to parties. But what I hope is that let's say you have a party, let's say there's 25 people in the party, you're manning 5 ships that night in your little mini fleet. I hope that the owner of one of those ships can set themselves as the flagship, right? And then that ship is the one that kind of gains command and control capabilities. Now, maybe there's some real implementations in there, such as maybe the only ships that can be flagships or have those command and control capabilities are ships that have some sort of hollow table in them, or maybe there's ships that have a certain number of computer blades free to manage that data. But I would love, for example, and I'll just use let's say you have 5-ship fleet, but then let's say there's a Polaris in there. And the group has designated the Polaris the command and control ship, the flagship. It'd be great if that is then somehow set to where that Polaris gets detailed information on where each ship is, its distance, because maybe your fleet's spread out quite a ways. You may not all be flying tight, but where everyone is, et cetera, et cetera. Being able to tie into that, maybe being able to share radar data across. So if the Polaris with its capital radar being able, as the flagship, would then be able to trickle down its data to the other ships, right? So be able to trickle down its radar data to the freelancer that's flying along with them or whatever. In a sense, that would be the party leader, the raid leader, whatever. The Polaris would then maybe be able to mark targets, right? Let's say it's flying into a hostile zone. There's a bunch of pirates flying, buccaneers and cutlasses, but then there's also an Idris out there, a pirate Idris. The Polaris setting, the primary target is the Idris, or maybe the Polaris has made the tactical decision to set the primary targets as the fighters and relay that information down, not only through voice chat, but obviously through the in-game systems as well. That's something I hope they add. You two have any thoughts on that?
I can imagine target pinning like we have today, but just on a multi-ship level.
Yeah.
I could totally see that happening. But you raise a super good point about computer blades and options and how that might affect fleet operations.
Mhm.
This, that entire level of the game, which we did get a list of possible blades and
Yeah, we did get a
modules at
list.
one stage.
That
And
list is really interesting too. If you haven't seen the list of like the type of computer blades you're going to be able to use, it's really interesting. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff in there. Which
yeah,
makes
and that could
me,
really affect how fleets work, you know.
yeah, and which makes me wonder too, you know, and I think of this, Ender, just from your air traffic control experience, like almost a new type of ship where if eventually we are able to tap into other ship systems to where, let's say you're flying in a fleet but you're all pulling from the Polaris's capital radar, it
Yep.
would be cool if there was a ship, and maybe it's a ship type, and this would be a very passive style gameplay, I get it, but that's essentially a a computer blade ship. That's all it does. It's got a massive amount of computers on it, sort of like the MSR. I know the MSR is a data runner. MSR could sort of be this ship, but a ship with a massive amount of computer banks that could be that, that tech relay for a fleet. I think that could be kind of cool.
Almost like
Imagine if
current AWACS
exactly.
aircraft.
Imagine if when you grouped up in a party in a fleet, you had some sort of behind the scenes invisible, dial that says how much computer power your current party of ships has. But you add this ship in there with all this computer power, that's all it does. That meter's going all the way over, and now other ships have the ability to pull all that capital class radar data, scanning, target acquisition, all that stuff. If it's an industrial fleet, maybe you gain the ability to pull scanning data from the Orion, you know what I mean, or what have you, and get more information. I don't know. I think that kind of interplay of ship types could be really interesting in a fleet format.
Yeah, it would be real
They do
interesting.
focus on these gameplay related features towards org and fleet gameplay, rather than the management side of things that we could handle ourselves in our own ways.
Yeah.
Um,
Hendel on chat brings up beyond visual range target data share. Yeah, exactly that type of stuff. Absolutely. So we talked about a few of these. The next one I was thinking about too was, and we've talked a little bit about this, Ender, especially in regards to the Kraken. And this, it's not specifically fleet related, but I guess it does tie into fleets in a little bit of a way. But is like boarding parties. Like, let's say you are operating a Kraken and you have some boarding parties attempt to get into the Kraken, but let's say you're flying in a fleet. Let's say the fleet comes under attack, and in the melee and the chaos, some pirate org comes in with their prowlers and gets up, flies in stealth mode as this Kraken and its fleet of ships are in battle, and it lands on the Kraken, and its people jump out and they're trying to break into the Kraken and stuff. You start getting into that like security aspect of fleet gameplay, and I think
Oh yeah.
that takes place in two regimes. It takes place obviously within ships, so you're going to need to have fighter supports and stuff, to help defend the fleet, but then also on the ship level, you're going to need, and while it's not fleet gameplay, it's multi-crew gameplay, but multi-crew gameplay is sort of like the
Fleet
FPS
gameplay.
version of fleet
Yeah,
gameplay.
I
You know
mean,
what I mean? So that shipboard
yeah,
security, being able to stop boarding parties, and the
yep,
interoperability of that. So we've been talking a lot about how different ships would communicate amongst a fleet, but imagine that same thing being brought down to a large scale ship like the Kraken or the Idris or the
yep,
Javelin, especially. And, let's say a boarding party is detected. It'd be cool if the captain of the ship or the XO or whoever is able to hit a red alert thing where all the lights inside the interior of the ship change red, and it's an alarm goes off, so people in the ship know, okay, that means we got a boarding party. I need to stop prepping dinner for everyone, and I've got to now grab a weapon from the weapon locker,
yep.
and I need to go to my designated choke point. Or, like you said before, Starlet, Maybe there's a different type of alarm. Maybe it's a fire detection alarm where there's a fire detected in a cargo bay of a ship, and now everyone needs to stop what they're doing and organize as a party, as a group to put that fire out. So again, while it's not fleet gameplay, it is like a style of fleet gameplay for FPS.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of interesting and something that I think will bring a lot of life to the game.
And you bring up
And
a
there's,
really. Oh, go ahead, Starlet. Go ahead.
there's there are genuinely Star Citizens out there. This is the gameplay that they want to experience. They want to go in with 5 or 10 people who know what they're doing and to board and take over a javelin and steal it from someone else. And that's their
Right.
entire dream of this game, right?
Yeah.
So that stuff will happen. And we will have to combat that with security blades, with clever uses of positioning the camera with hotkeys and things, so you can have little security cameras around your ship, and having troops on board each ship to be able um, to repel any borders and things. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, VMXEO brings up too, most ships do have emergency lighting modes, actually. They're just not really used in game much right now, but I do think we'll have the ability to manually activate those. Ender, go ahead. I interrupted you there.
Oh, I was just saying that you bring up a really good thought as well, where people are going to have multiple roles on a ship. You know, you're going to have an engineer and a cook and all these different roles, and maybe one or two people from each role. Their designated backup is shipboard security, and then your other designated backups are who knows, engineering and gunning and things like that. So you're going to have a lot of different roles where people are playing two different jobs, and they have to know that job inside and out.
Yeah, I can
It's going to
see
get real interesting.
I can see a lot of people having both a combat and non-combat role, and then even a critical role. So, like, when the ship is going down in flames, everything stops and everyone becomes the engineer.
Of course,
Yeah.
the PVE stuff is for fleets is fine, but the PvP stuff does require more than 50 people per server to make that possible. So
absolutely.
it may be a lot further down the track than we think.
Yeah, well, that kind of brings up another one of our points, in our show notes, which is the technology support for fleet gameplay, which can include things like server meshing, persistence, and I say persistence because anyone who comes on board their ship is going to want access to guns and gear and maybe a environmental suit and all that stuff, and they're going to need to be able to store that stuff. So how do you see, and Starlight, I'm going to hand this one over to you. I know you've talked probably ad nauseum about it in the last 2 weeks since CitizenCon. I know you've been on several shows. Um, I just recently saw the Info Runners episode that you were a guest on, and I thought you did a really great job of breaking down the concerns there. I won't call them issues yet or stuff like that because we know it's still early. We know they'll probably iterate. We know that the shard system they're coming out with for server meshing is probably going to be the step one, but
Yeah.
specifically, how do you what technology support do you think we need for large scale fleet gameplay, the type of stuff that you think is that kind of grand vision of in your head of like 50 ships flying together?
Yeah, actually, ironically, I'm most looking forward to PVE fleet gameplay, like doing a WoW raid that's well executed and everyone knows their roles and tasks and well prepared, and you go into battle against the computers and achieve, and that's what I want to do in Star Citizen, which actually doesn't require giant server caps. So what they're actually doing with server meshing, funnily enough, does support the kind of gameplay I want to enjoy, which means that the NPCs actually work, and it means that more and more content can be added without loading the one server down past its maximum point. So that's kind of cool. But it's the PvP fleet side, which was kind of the initial dream. It was presented back at the Kickstarter days of one big universe where everyone would play in the same pool. and that's the bit that's under question right now. They did not clarify at all. They focused on during CitizenCon on a multiverse, so multiple shards, multiple universes, where they try and group people into one universe, so it feels like it's only one universe. But to make that happen, you really have to have a large player count in each universe, so that can work well enough that you don't notice it's not a single giant universe, but a multiverse.
And not even just for the fleet itself, but the fleet will want to be in a bubble where other things are going on. So it's got to support that plus,
Right. Although, admittedly, even with 50 people, you could take maybe a javelin and a few support ships out and do a PvE event, and that would be kind of fine.
Yeah.
Right? So there is some PvE fleet. The requirements for server meshing are much, or shard scaling are much lower for PvE than they are for PvP.
Yeah.
So I think the big PvP stuff will come later as they manage to scale the shards up over time. Fingers crossed that's what they're aiming for. It wasn't clear.
I personally do think, we've talked about fleet size too, especially in a PvP sort of regime. I do think that CIG by design has sort of forced you're going to need probably around 5 to 6 ships minimum for an effective fleet, primarily because of the niche gameplay they've given some ships, again, by design. I can't really see a scenario where you're going to be out with a fleet. Let's say it's all military ships. Let's say you go out with a Perseus, an Idris, a Hammerhead, or not even Idris. Let's say you go out with a Hammerhead, 2 Perseuses, maybe a Nautilus. You're going to need a medical ship with you. Hell, not even if you get into combat. One of you trips and falls down the stairs, whatever it is, you're going to need that. You're going to need that medical game or medical stuff. We don't totally know how fuel and repair is going to net out and how fragile ships are going to be. You're probably going to need that Vulcan or Crucible or something. And then I never see a scenario where you don't need at least 1 or 2 fighters flying with you. So again, by design, they've really forced the hand into a fleet being not just a javelin. Is for a PvE scenario, I think that totally can be fine. But for a PvP scenario, your hand's really forced in that your fleet is going to be a few ships for sure. The less ships you have, obviously, the more risky it is, and then you still really need to maybe reassess the decisions. But and again, that's by design. It's by some of their ships are really niche.
But remember that Stanton is not a high security area, and Pyro is a low security area.
Right.
So when we get Terra and things like that, which are high security, it may be possible for a couple of people to go out in a ship relatively safely.
True.
And not worry too much in those specific areas.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to bring up was logistical. So I wrote here: logistical support. So ships and tools to help organize. So one thing I've been wondering if with fleet gameplay would be some sort of way in game to organize fleet movement. And Ender, you'll know this quite well from our many years, and we do need a Starlette emoji, by the way. I'm gonna get to work on that immediately. That's being made priority 1 now on Starjump Studios. But and you'll know this, Ender, from when we did complex ARMA operations with our MilSim unit. We need the ability to do some sort of pre-planning, especially with things like rally points. For overall fleet movements, especially for combat scenarios. So, for example, space is really vast, right? If you're flying with a fleet, you're going to want to be able to set a rally point that is where your refueling ships or your medical ships stay and wait off station, because they shouldn't be flying into the combat fold necessarily. But yet at the same time, they can't just be sitting out in the vastness of space somewhere. There needs to be a rally point that everyone knows and can share via their radar. Maybe it's a marker system or whatever, where people know, okay, I need to get to the medical people, or I need to get out of the combat zone, get to the refuelers. They're waiting over here.
Right.
So that's another system I hope they add. I mean, Ender, from Arma, we would set pickup points, drop off locations, rally points, all that stuff.
Yeah. And for most of the teams that we had, it was you and me that led them there because we were the only ones that could figure it out.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is with this, I see us being able to do that, but share that with the fleet. So, for example, you had said choose that main person, that main ship that is your command and control ship,
Mm-hmm.
and a backup for that as well. Because if that command and control gets taken out, you're going to still need it. But say it's one with a 3D map, you're able to select a spot on that 3D map, and it should be able to send it out to your fleet.
Yeah.
And allow for your fleet to track that, your pilots at a minimum to track that location. And I think that would be really, really great.
We know that they're redoing the star map and building blocks and all that. That's been talked about several times, and it's the number one thing in my opinion that needs to be done in the game right now. Like if all
Oh
production
yeah,
stopped on Star Citizen and we could only choose one thing to be worked on right now, it would be the star map for sure.
it's horrible.
It's horrible,
It's
but
horrible.
I when CIG typically when they redo something, they take one of two paths with it. Either they redo it in a way and add a bunch of functionality into it that we weren't expecting, um, or they redo it in something like building blocks, and it pretty much is the same as that we had, but they've built in the ability to do future stuff with it. I don't know which path they'll take with the star map, but I have a feeling that the star map we're going to get is not just going to be a building blocks version of what we have that actually works now. I do think it's going to come with some new functionality, and I do hope some of the functionality it comes with are, well, personally, I hope there's view modes. I hope you can do a 3D or a 2D version of it. But regardless, I hope that there is the ability to set marks on that and share those marks within your party or what have you. Maybe there's a limit to how many marks you can set. Maybe it's 2 or 3 or whatever. But I think stuff like that would be cool, and then that mark would show up as a beacon or whatever for your party members. So you could set beacon A as our rally point, beacon B as our, whatever. I just think that would be really cool. And primarily, I think of that with fleets because the funny thing about Star Citizen and scale is you don't have to be too far away from even something like an Idris before it's a speck. You can't see it
Yep.
at all. You
Yep.
know what I mean? So when you're operating in a fleet, and this is obviously something that, people that, are on ships in the Navy will probably know quite well. You want to know where the other ships are at, especially ships that are
Yep.
flying stealth mode, like a submarine. You want to know where that submarine is. And if you're flying in a fleet and you have some ships that are masking in the radar signatures of bigger ships, or some ships that are flying like full on stealth mode, you're going to want to know where they're at. So being able to set marks, track people, that whole logistical kind of UI support. And I think that kind of again ties into the whole leadership org flagship stuff we've talked about. But that whole UI backend to what level of control we're going to have is something that I don't remember them ever talking about. I'm sure someone in chat can correct me on that if they have, but I would love to see what that is and what they're thinking. Um, Maybe that's really far off, and that's something they're not thinking about. I hope they are. Again, just because we're finally, I think, initially going to see it with 315, kind of going full circle to what this conversation started with. The medical gameplay, the looting, all this stuff, we're now going to be forced to bring other people along with us. So our hand is going to be forced in terms of needing some of these systems to effectively operate as a fleet in Star Citizen.
Yep.
So that's, again, fleet gameplay is pretty speculative. We could go in a bunch of different directions. But I think it's that and multi-crew, which we've talked about. Multi-crew almost is sort of like the FPS version of fleet gameplay. That to me is one of the biggest things that attracted me to Star Citizen, which is why I wanted this to be our first topic. It is the reason I bought into this game. It's the reason I have faith for the Chris Roberts vision. But before we kind of sign off for the night, let's do final thoughts. On pretty much anything we've talked about tonight. Any last things you want to say, Ender? I'll hand it over to you first.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Super Liberator. And
we're
I'll
gonna
be honest.
We're gonna play the Super Liberator since we're all sitting here talking. We will do the Super
Yes,
Liberator to loop. But go ahead, Ender. I interrupted you.
I legitimately can't wait for the fleet gameplay and the multi-crew gameplay to really start to grow into its own. And I said that at a perfect time. It started anyway, and just build up into something that is, I'll be honest, just great. I can't wait for the potential that this game has to really kind of grow into itself and show everybody what we can do with a fleet with multi-crew.
Yeah,
it's going to be great.
Yeah, Starlette, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm also waiting for the Super Liberator, and we'll pledge more to the game to get one. So please make one, CIG.
Super. It's the Deliberator. It is a new type of ship that must come. But I do think we still have a little bit of hope for that true Anvil capital ship, Starlet. You never know. The longbow may exist.
I know some of you love Drake, and that's good, and I'm happy you do. But I'm just not a Drake fan myself, so I'd rather not have to have Krakens in my.
It's it's slightly. Let me see if I can reach it here without knocking everything over. I am a true Kraken captain here.
I know.
So yeah, I will always be a Kraken loyalist, but I'm always for other carrier ships, especially a military carrier that is open decked like the Kraken, but more military focused. Because as I said earlier in a chat recently this week, the Kraken is not a military ship. It is a civilian industrial ship. It carries industrial components. And while they have said that it only carries industrial components, I do know that John Crew has said in the past that they may do away with that limitation to where you can outfit it with military components, but it is an industrial ship. And I just want to put that out. My final thoughts on this are while there's a lot of core tech going into the game, things like server meshing, persistence, medical gameplay, death of a spaceman, the looting, object container streaming, or a year and a half ago or whatever, all that stuff is starting to come online. For me, the dream of Star Citizen is fleet gameplay. It is being able to not only, for example, if me and Ender get together one night, it's not just that we both jump in our arrows or we both jump in prospectors and go do the same thing. I'm really waiting for that time when I'm doing one thing and he's doing his thing in support of that, or vice versa, and then expand that out to 50 people or whatever, and then dial that down to the FPS level where we're working the same on a ship. That to me is the entire reason I bought into the game. So hopefully, I think ultimately from the stuff CIG is doing, I think they're of the same mindset. We obviously know they've talked a lot about that. But I would like for them soon, as more and more of these systems like medical gameplay and all that coming online, I would maybe like to hear them start talking a little bit about how we're going to start working with other people. Even the inventory system right now, for example, when you're on a ship and you bring up in 315 and you bring up the local inventory or whatever, your personal inventory, one player's inventory on the ship is different from another player's inventory on the ship. You don't share inventories yet. So the game still feels very like isolated and like you're on an island. So I'm really excited for that day when that does, kind of fully open up. So anyways, that is my final thought for the episode. That is going to be about it for this episode of Starjump Station. Again, we are going to do these once a week. Obviously, that could get interrupted at some point, but we're going to try to do them every Friday night at the same time as we did this episode tonight. We're probably going to have the next episode or two be on Starjump Grim Twitch channel, and then it gets uploaded to YouTube right after. After an episode or two, though, on this channel, just to kind of get established and get our rhythm going, we will probably then alternate where we do 2 episodes on my channel, 2 episodes on Ender channel, and just kind of go back and forth so that we're both hosting it. And to help keep both of the Twitch channels alive. But don't forget that we will always upload the VOD to YouTube either that night or first thing in the morning. So those will be available pretty quickly. We also have big plans for this. We want to do giveaways. We want to expand the Twitch interaction, the live stream interaction. We are going to bring aboard our own. I know Joran's in the chat right now. We're going to bring aboard our own T-Nightster type person to help us deal with chat questions and kind of help keep us on track so we don't miss things. And we're going to try to pull inspiration from a lot of the content content creators that are out there that do great work and try to learn from what they're doing to make this show better. Obviously, we're all big fans of the Yacht Club, so expect us to pull some inspiration from Yacht Club every now and then. But again, ultimately, we are trying to do something a little different. One of the key areas you'll see us try to inject a little bit of uniqueness in will be on visuals. If we're talking about something specifically, like maybe we're talking about the Endeavor on a future episode, we're going to try to bring up, we're going to try to exploit and utilize our 3D models and all the stuff we have from the cinematics and be able to show visuals that go along with our discussions to help visualize some of the ideas and concepts we're getting across. You saw that a little bit with the Liberator loop we had and while we were talking. We'll try to bring unique stuff and unique insights when we can. But it was a lot of fun. We really glad so many people came and showed up for the first episode. Do we know what the second episode is going to be about yet? I don't think we do. I think we're still deciding.
We had discussions, but I don't think we've come up with anything quite yet.
We have a list of like 5 or 6 episodes already in planning. Oh, one thing I will say though, leading into IAE, we definitely are going to do some IAE focused episodes during the IAE time period, and leading and going up towards IAE. So probably the episode right before IAE starts, we are going to do a full episode on the CCU chain that Starlette talked about. We're going to do a full breakdown on that, so she'll probably be pretty much leading that episode.
100%.
And breaking down the pros and cons and what to look for when you're trying to get to a specific ship. So I can imagine, coming off of CitizenCon, a lot of people are going to be eyeing the BMM come CitizenCon. Now, we don't know where that price increase is going to happen. Rest assured it will go up, but I'm sure Starlette will have some good pointers and tips for those of you now eyeing a BMM to add to your hangar. But that's going to be about it. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back same time, same place next week for Starjump Station. I hope you all enjoyed the show. We're going to play the show open once again on our way out, just because for those of you that missed it, we do have a new show open showing us all arriving at Starjump Station. So enjoy it, and we will talk to you all next time. Thank you so much, everyone. Salute. Thank you for all the gifted subs. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
See you on Discord next week.
Thanks, everyone.